Number 10. Varlam Monastery. Perched on the peaks of towering sandstone pillars formed millions of years ago stand the monasteries of Meteora, most of which were constructed during the Middle Ages. The Greek word meteora means suspended in the air, and this phrase sums up the design cues of these curious, ancient, gorgeous Greek Orthodox monasteries. The site of the monasteries offer incredible views of Greece, showing the past and present all in one landscape. The second largest of the Meteora monasteries, the Holy Monastery of Varlam, sits at a 1,200-foot summit. It was named after monk Varlam, who lived on top of this rock as a hermit. It offers a glimpse of the difficulties the monks encountered when building their hilltop sanctuaries. It took 22 years to bring all the building materials to the summit. The tower, receiving platform and rope basket used to hoist supplies, are on display in the Refectory Museum. Until the 20th century, the only way for visitors to reach Varlam was to be hoisted up as well. Today, 195 steps carved into the stone cliff face lead visitors to the summit. Inside, frescoes cover the walls of the main chapel, including a harrowing depiction of the apocalypse, now that it's more accessible. But just think about how harrowing a journey that used to be. How long and high would you climb to see a cultural and historical artifact? Let us know in the comments below. Number 9. The Cliff House and Sutro Baths in San Francisco. The Cliff House and Sutro Baths in San Francisco could be the backdrop of multiple horror movies. Their tales involve apparitions, Satanists, explosions, dead children, secret cemeteries, disastrous fires, mummies, shipwrecks, and Native American legends. This one tiny corner of San Francisco has seen it all. A good place to start is the abundance of ghost sightings reported in the area, the most famous of which is the forlorn woman who wanders the rocks below the Cliff House. Legend has it, the restless spirit is that of Natalie Selena Harrison, who, in life, reportedly waited on the shore in vain for her fiancé to return from World War I. She died brokenhearted, and people have been seeing her ghostly form since 1917. When the Paranormal Ghost Society investigated the area, they claimed to pick up the sound of weeping on their instruments. While the Sutro Baths have seen better days in terms of its grandeur, the stories it leaves behind are sure to keep memories fresh. Most investigators looking for the paranormal are fixated on the tunnel at the baths, once used to pump seawater into the indoor pools. Legend has it that the spirits of a drowned woman and an older man frequent the spot. Stories say that if you leave a lit candle in the tunnel, the spirit of the woman is summoned, and she throws the candle into the ocean. Outside, the ghost sightings keep coming. There are multiple accounts of women dressed in Victorian-era attire strolling along the beach with parasols, as well as turn-of-the-century bathers hanging around where the 7 impressive pools used to be. One of the spirits is rumored to be Frank Denvin, who died in 1896 at the age of 16, having fallen headfirst from the ladder of a water slide into an empty cement tank. Number 8. Hanging Hotel. At the Sky Lodge Adventure Suites in Peru, the thrill is the death-defying stunt you pull every time you rest your head. These suites are glass lodges precariously attached to the side of a cliff in Peru's Sacred Valley. If you're brave enough to stay, these crystalline pods are accessible only after you scale the sheer rock face of the valley's Rocky Mountain up about 1,400 feet, or hike up a daring trail that includes a zip-line network. Once you settle down for the night, you're treated to impressive panoramic views of the wild valley below, and at night, the Milky Way. Sky Lodge says that the motivation behind these dramatic lodges was to offer a unique experience that reconnects with nature or make them realize what luxury can be. The suites are the brainchild of an adventure company, Nature Viva, who want their guests to embrace their inner adventurer. Once you're ready to leave your suite, you can zip wire down to the ground below. If you have the courage, inside these 24 by 8 foot pods, guests are treated to views worth marveling over, alongside 4 beds, a dining area, and a private bathroom. The beds have down pillows and quilts, ensuring you'll sleep well if you aren't distracted by stargazing or the perilous height at which you sit, tethered to the side of a rock face. Number 7. Casa Brutale. While it has a name that seems scary enough, it might be the type of person who would live here who proves the scariest part of this yet-to-be-built home. You're constantly reminded of your place in the world, wedged in a mountain, hundreds of feet in the air, in case you forgot, by the floor-to-ceiling glass covering the entire cliff-facing facade, which brings light and an amazing view of Fakra Mountain outside Beirut in Lebanon. At an altitude of 5,250 feet above the ground, described by many as an ideal pad for Bond villains, Casa Brutal, the viral project launched by architecture firm OPA in July 2015, was approved for construction in the following year, but has yet to be finished. The house is a cliff house, as it sits on the top of a crest in the mountain ridge. But it's also technically subterranean, since the foundation entire house will be wedged into the rock face itself, flush with the ground and side of the escarpment. The scariest part is the proposed balcony, which hangs free from the rest of the house and is completely exposed to the elements, giving a perfect 180-degree view of the mountain range the house sits in. This might be the scariest cliff house for the construction crew to build, if not the scariest to live inside. Number 6. Holman House. The Holman House sits on the edge of a 230-foot-high cliff in Dover Heights near Sydney, Australia. It has a viewing room for entertaining and eating at the top of the estate, with a panoramic view of the Tasman Sea. The floor plan and shape of the Holman House refers to Picasso's painting The Bather. It contains a series of complex fluid living spaces set within a meandering perimeter that arcs, folds, and stretches in response to the sun, landscape, and views. Living and dining areas cantilever out over the ocean, allowing dramatic views up and down the coast. The lower floor forms a base that is built from rough stone walls like an extension of the cliff below. These walls continue along the cliff edge to form a series of terrace gardens, and a reinforced concrete form the upper deck. 4 steel inclined pillars support the major overhang on the top floor. It is as scientifically impressive a build as it is beautiful to look at, but it doesn't change the fact that the massive home, made of steel and other heavy materials, is perched at the edge of a country, staring out at a body of water hundreds of feet down below. Engineering skills keep this building off the ground, but maybe any queasy visitor's fear will keep them planted on land away from the overhangs and panoramic views. Number 5. Modscape's Sea Barnacle House. Inspired by the way barnacles attach themselves to the hull of a ship, Australian architecture firm Modscape designed a modern home that could hang off the side of a cliff rather than sit on top of it. Owners would be able to enter the home via a carport on the top floor, while an elevator lift allows them to navigate through each of the descending living spaces. Each of the building's 5 modules would be connected to the side of a vertical rock face hanging right over the water. This house is a clinger. To add to the fear factor, instead of something built into the cliff like Casa Brutal or Holman House, each floor of the house would be designed as a module that would be anchored to the rock face with engineered steel pins. And as the home's roof would be level with the cliff's top, a carport would be used to lower residents and guests to the first floor. What happens if the power goes out and you're stuck down there? The designers also envision a central staircase and elevator which would separate the home's 2 sides, and minimal decor in order to keep the focus on the ocean. Perhaps the calming waves and salt spray would distract you from the fact that you're a couple of screws loose from going for a swim along with the house. Number 4. Cliff Dwellings of Mesa Verde. The cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde are some of the most notable and best preserved in the North American continent. Sometime during the late 1190s, after primarily living on the Mesa top for 600 years, many ancestral Pueblo people began living in pueblos they built beneath the overhanging cliffs. The structures ranged in size from one-room storage units to villages of more than 150 rooms. While still farming the Mesa tops, they continued to reside in the alcoves, repairing, remodeling, and constructing new rooms for nearly a century. By the late 1270s, the population began migrating south into present-day New Mexico and Arizona. By 1300, the ancestral Pueblan occupation of Mesa Verde ended. To see the living spaces today, you have to climb long entrance ladders or wind your way up steep hills to get views of the dwellings, some of which are made up of tens upon tens of rooms that house ancestral Pueblan people. The ancestral Pueblans moved onto the Mesa around AD 500, but the cliff dwellings we see today were actually built around AD 1200. Though the ancestral Pueblans lived along the cliffs for that 700-year period, the cliff dwellings were constructed at the end of this time frame and then only lived for about 75 to 100 years. No exact reason is known for the ancestral Pueblans moving away from these massive structures. Number 3. Vertical camping. Okay, so this isn't a permanent structure, but it is terrifying and it is a place you can call home if you have the knowledge and willingness to cling to a cliff while you sleep inside of a tent. With the rise in popularity of recent climbing documentaries like Free Solo and The Dawn Wall, the prospect of big wall climbing has drawn the attention of adrenaline junkies and climbing newbies alike. While professional climbers make it look easy, the realities of big wall climbing involve a number of high-altitude tricks and maneuvers that the average outdoors person likely hasn't even learned yet. Things like carrying your supplies and storing your food are immensely more complicated on the side of a cliff, not to mention disposing of waste, using the bathroom, and for multi-day climbs, vertical camping. Several realities and truths about sleeping on a shelf in the sky make it very different from most people's daily lives. For instance, if you drop a piece of toast in your kitchen, that's too bad, especially if it lands butter side down. But you can pick it up, clean up the mess, and make a new piece of toast. If you accidentally drop your cell phone off a portalage hundreds of feet off the ground, as Tommy Caldwell did during the Dawn Wall climb, it's gone. And hopefully it doesn't hit anybody on the way down. This goes for everything: your toothbrush, pillow, sleeping bag, spoon, water bottle, and your bottle of sunscreen. So you're careful, or you pay the consequences. Number 2. House on the Cliff in Alicante, Spain. Geometric linear purity is characteristic of this project, House on the Cliff, in the Alicante region of Spain. The house is embedded in a very steep slope. This unusual and highly difficult plot of land inspired an imaginative three-dimensional shape which invites a startling visual dialogue with its surroundings. Nestled in the rocks, the house is literally suspended over the contour of the hill, giving visitors the feeling of vertigo as they gaze over the house's edge downwards. Made of concrete, it is insulated from the outside but also covered by white lime stucco, selected by the architects for its flexibility and smoothness. Honorable mention number 1. The Four Treehouse. Are you anxious yet? Let's take a break. Remember when your dad said he'd build you a treehouse when you were 8 years old but just never got around to it? The Four Treehouse is a 2-ton, 410-square-foot treehouse suspended 20 feet off the ground from steel airline cables anchored to 4 tree trunks that, while expensive, is a lot more sturdy than what your procrastinating dad had planned. The designer, Lucas Koss, said he had to let the trees decide how the house would be designed in order for the concept to work. What is it about tree houses that we love so much? Their playfulness, the escapism they offer, and the platforms they provide into nature all come to mind. Posing as a Japanese lantern on stilts, Ka's creation floats within the fir trees on Lake Muskoka, Ontario, Canada. It looks like an excellent way to go glamping in the Canadian wilderness above the bugs and small animals who might bother you in a tent. Ready for nightmare fuel again? Bears can climb trees of that height with no issue whatsoever. Sleep tight. Honorable mention number 2. The O2 Treehouse. Oakland-based O2 Treehouse uses steel, wood, and glass to create tiny pine cone-shaped homes that look like ornaments hanging from the treetops. Best of all, they're available for purchase, so you can have your own forest gateway anywhere you're allowed to break ground. The pine cone is accessed via a tall wooden ladder and a trap door. A bathroom is located in a separate treehouse that is closer to the ground and connected to the main structure via entry stairs and a wooden catwalk. Inside, 64 diamond-shaped windows provide 360-degree views of the surrounding forest. Even the floors are composed of transparent panels, enhancing the sensation of floating above the earth. The best part about this treehouse is that you can choose where to build it. If you want to put it at hammock height off the ground, we won't judge. Number 1. Villa Escarpa in Algarve, Portugal. The dreamy landscape of Portugal's Algarve region lends itself to eccentric architecture. Villa Escarpa is a white geometric giant balancing over a steep escarpment overlooking the village of Praia da Luz. Due to strict rules regarding construction on this coastline, the structure could not exceed the footprint taken up by the previous house. But architect Mario Martins found a spectacular way to make the best of a relatively small plot. Despite the home being on the edge of a steep graded cliff, the size constraints and very strong winds that came whipping up the face of the home, the Villa Escarpa managed to be beautiful, daring, and safe to live in, despite the challenges of the location on which it was built.